The Blue Jackets are on a 3-game losing streak, but all that means is they are more in the race for Connor Bedard. We're continuing our draft coverage today, talking about a different WHL prospect. I've got Joel Henderson of Puck Preps to talk all about Andrew Cristall and whether he could be a Blue Jacket come July.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here bringing you news, stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube. We are near a new milestone, so that's super exciting for me personally. If you hit subscribe and then click the little bell button underneath the video, then you will get notified when new episodes go live. So, I win, you win, everybody wins, except, of course, the Blue Jackets. But we're not going to talk about that today. Today, I've got another draft profile for you. I've got Andrew Cristall of the WHL, and I'm talking about him with Joel Henderson of Puck Preps, my go-to WHL expert. So I'm just going to turn it over to him because he is much smarter than me about this kind of thing. So I'll just let the conversation play. But I want to move on. I want to talk about a different guy from the WHL. I feel like there's a ton of good talent in the WHL this season that kind of I'm like, oh, that guy. So I want to talk about Andrew Cristall, who's playing for the Kelowna Rockets at the minute and has 84 points in 49 games, which is pretty darn good. He's another winger. He's another smaller player. But what can you tell me about Cristall?
So Andrew he's just always been small. And so even when he was drafted in the WHL, it's a fun kind of anecdote for people, but when they had the hub in the first, years of COVID, and the WHL got the hub going, they, normally players that are drafted in the first round, they have to get some sort of exception to be able to get into the league. And so, the talk was Bedard was going to have that exception, but nobody else. But because because they could take the year, because the players weren't playing U18, a lot of stuff wasn't going. They kind of made an exception for the first rounders and then a couple others kind of to get into the league. And so he comes into the hub, and I think he's like 5'7", 140 pounds, playing with these guys. And they were just like, he just has to stay out of trouble and not get hit. And then he can start making some plays. And that's what he did. He stayed out of trouble. He found his spots. And when he was on the sides, his vision, his playmaking, his hands are so good that even if he was just standing still receiving passes down low, he was facilitating in the middle. He's about as smart of a player as well. Like, they're different smarts, but both him and Zach Benson are just really smart. Zach is one that understands the details of the game as a two-way player. Andrew is one who he navigates space and puck control. And it's almost like it's almost like the ice is just a board that he can control. He understands where this momentum is coming from, He sees the little openings. He sees the opportunities. So it makes him about as efficient as a point getter as you can get kind of at this level, not named Connor Bedard.
For sure. It feels like not named Connor Bedard is just the qualifier that you put on every single. You have to put them on every single prospect. He's pretty good at this thing, but he's no Bedard. So it's been a weird year of prospect evaluation.
He's putting up a bonkers amount of points, but yet there's still somebody above him. So
it's been wild to like. So I've kind of been keeping an eye on Connor Bedard's point totals because one of the CBJ prospect is leading the QMJHL in points right now with like 100 and something. Stupid. And so every so often I check in to see where Bedard is, and I'm like, how has he had another 6-point night? How did he have another 4-goal night? It's bonkers. But in terms of Cristall, he is a guy that, like, looking on the elite, I like to look on elite prospects and kind of look at where the consolidated rankings have him, and I've got people ranking him as high as 6, and then I've got people ranking him kind of 16th, which feels like for a draft as weird as this one, feels like a really small band. I feel like there's a lot of guys in this draft that could go 6th and could go 26th, but he kind of has a more narrow band. So where kind of do you see him Like, where do you see him landing in the draft? Where is he on your list at the minute?
The reality is I don't know. Like where he's on my list and where he lands are two different discussions. Because I've heard some people, whether it's rumors or not or whatever, I've heard some people saying like maybe even second round, which is just, it doesn't make any sense to me, because the kind of players that are in this draft and the type of gambles that you want to take, he's just, to me, he's worth so much more than some of the other guys. But so from that standpoint, I think, there's a history, these guys kind of dropping and then making their names later. Pick a player that doesn't have size and doesn't really play physically, and put him into this timeline. It's an Alex DeBrincat, it's a Logan Stankoven, there's different reasons for it, but there's different reasons that teams get a little bit antsy and a little bit.
It all kind of boils down to the same thing.
Yeah. But even like, those guys in their draft years, I mean, it was just, you find a way to justify your point. And so with DeBrincat, yes, he was scoring like 50 goals. But if you tell yourself that those goals won't go in at the NHL level, then what is he worth? And so that's kind of in your mind. And with Stankoven was having a great season, but it's like, well, but he's on the second line and he hasn't produced blah, 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 like on a really great team that they had at that time. And it was like, well, if he doesn't do this, then he isn't worth this. And you kind of like, you kind of convince yourself that if this doesn't translate, then this. And so, because there's a history of players who, like, even if they don't work out to hit the mark that you want them to hit, at least they'll be third line players for you. And so they have that speed, that grit, that tenacity, that physicality, the size, whatever it is. And so teams like to bet on that. And so with Cristall, it is a risk. There are guys that have been, in and through the league that are kind of similar to him-ish, that haven't really maybe hit the echelon that people were hoping for. Guys from Western Canada even too. Maybe one of the more recent ones is Kailer Yamamoto. But Cristall is vastly outproducing what Yamamoto did. So you take kind of the markings of that player and the things that you're maybe frustrated with at the NHL level, and then you go, but what if he scores more than that? How much am I willing to accept as far as like they're not physical or they're not, you know what I mean? And so Cristall is physical in moments. He's way more puck battle-y positionally. If he feels like he can win a little race from you, he'll get inside position and maintain control. But he can get hit. He can get pushed off pucks. He can hit back every now and then, but he's not the guy that's diving into shot blocking lanes or coming deep in the zone or battling heavy to spring forth a teammate. He is looking for opportunities to be aggressive. He's looking for opportunities to get the jump on the play in space. And because when you give him time and space, there's almost no one that can score at the rate that he can.
In a minute, I'm going to talk more about Andrew Cristall with Joel. But first, I've got to tell you all about one of our sponsors today, and that is Athletic Greens. So I started taking Athletic Greens because I am a gremlin person who needed something to improve my energy, to improve my morning, my gut health, my immune system. Like, I was tired all the time. I was just lying around on the couch, and I wanted something to help that. And Athletic Greens was the thing for that. It's 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food-sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, and it helps you start your day right. It supports gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, aging, just all of the things that you need to start your day. And it's time to reclaim your health right now. Arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It is just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. You don't need a million different pills or supplements to look out for your health. And to make it even easier, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs for your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Once again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Yeah, for sure. He feels like a player that his ceiling is going to be dependent on what team he goes to, because I feel like some teams are better at, like, that we talked about last episode of project versus sure thing, and he feels like probably a project to the right team. If they put him in positions to succeed, he's gonna really shine. But if a team just drafts him and expects him to reproduce reproduce what he's doing in the WHL in the NHL under vastly different conditions, that they're going to be disappointed. And so it's going to be really interesting to see. I feel like Kyler Yamamoto is a really good example of Edmonton just sucks at developing players for the most part, and so he was drafted there, and then it's only really recently that he's kind of come into his own, and he was drafted, I want to say 2017, 2018.
I think. Yeah.
So, it's 5, almost 6 years on, and I don't know that you want to be waiting that long for a player to really kind of hit their stride. So it'll be interesting to see where he does end up landing, because I feel like that could be really contingent on how he ends up doing as a player.
Yeah, he's Cristall is, like I said, I'm like, the struggles that you kind of see from a guy like Yamamoto, it's just, the way that coaches will put it is you have to score enough to exist in the top 6. And so you have to take advantage of those opportunities to be able to do that. And I don't really have any doubts that Cristall can. It's a philosophy that comes down to whatever the organization is kind of looking for. Like, what does the best player mean to you? Because if you look at a guy like Kailer Yamamoto and you go, yeah, he's good, but will he help us win? It might like drop down his like draftability or how much you want to kind of invest in him as a prospect. And whether you think that's right or wrong, the ultimate goal from a lot of these teams is trading the guys that are good for guys that'll help them win. And that is what it is. And so, as somebody who's, the followers of Columbus, they can look to Calgary Flames fans and the amount of years that they said that this guy is electric, our best player, the guy that is everything to this franchise. But then the rumor circle of, can he help us win in the playoffs? Can he help us win? So it's he'll carry a bit of that with him. So like he'll be as good as he's allowed to be, but he's a player that you don't mold and shape and expect to be all sorts of things. You either accept him for who he is or you don't. And that's the thing about a guy like Johnny Gaudreau too. If you accept that he's going to be the best guy on your line, the guy that's creating, a guy that's just, ridiculously fun to watch, then you take him and you love every minute of it. But if you're grumbling and going, I wish he was 6'4" and 211 pounds, you're like, well, that's a different player. Like, so it's you can't turn him into that. And Cristall is one of those guys that is insanely talented, and he's somewhere in that mixture. I think there was somewhere else where I said he's somewhere in that mixture between a Seth Jarvis and a Johnny Gaudreau. He's in that mixture of like, that's his threshold to me. So it's like, I think that he'll be as good or better than Seth Jarvis is at the NHL level. And can he get to how efficient Johnny Gaudreau has been at the NHL level? Maybe. He does it a little differently, but maybe.
Yeah, if the Blue Jackets were somehow lucky enough to end up with the original Johnny Gaudreau and Johnny Gaudreau 2.0, like that would be a lot of fun. I would be extremely okay with that. I want to talk a little bit about kind of his development. He's a smaller player. He's probably got some growing to do still. He just turned 18 last month, so he's a baby still, essentially. What does he have to do to take that next step and to kind of either at the end of this season to prove that he can be a first-round pick in the NHL, or if then once he does get drafted, what does he have to do to make it to the NHL?
Yeah, like I said, I'm like, there's parts of his game where you just accept that he is this kind of player and not this. And so the things that he does do is, like I said, he tries to really, not necessarily cheat the zone, but he isn't coming down low to really like, he's a guy that wants to get off the rush. He's a guy that wants to create 2-on-1 chances to be able to play off the rush, to make defensemen kind of move and change their routes so that he can adapt to where they're going. He's a player who loves to always have the option to shoot or pass, and to make sure that defensemen and the goaltenders know that he has both of those options. And so he's always a dual threat. He's always opening his posture. Even lately too, I think a lot of his points has been getting just from being a playmaker, both on the power play 5-on-5. Like what he does is he fakes shot, absolutely like a beautiful fake, and then passes laterally to a teammate for a one-timer. And so he's a guy that kind of has that on the left side as well. He doesn't have the strongest of shots. It's one of those guys where metaphorically and physically, when he sees a window, he takes it. And so like, there are some games that I've watched him play where he really didn't have a very effectful game. He couldn't really use his speed off the rush. He was getting pushed off some pucks. they really didn't have a lot of effective zone time. And then he finished the game with 2 goals because he found a spot to just delay in the zone and found a high glove side. And then the other time he's down low in the zone and the goalie kind of creeped out a little bit and he just banked it off the goalie's back. Like, he's one of those guys that just, he is efficient because he's so smart and he has such incredible hands. And he always just leaves himself those deception angles too. So he's not scoring because he has the greatest shot. He's not scoring because he's, because he's the biggest, strongest, fastest. He's scoring because he outsmarts you and does it so fast. Like, his hands are very quick and he always kind of knows where his options are and how the flow of play is. So it's kind of like Johnny, but like Johnny can escape with his feet sometimes. He can really get his feet going and really like shift his edges all the time. And so Andrew does that more so in motion, where he kind of glides on his inside edges and he really shifts there, but in small pockets and small windows, like on a power play or something, he's not Johnny Gaudreauing it on the side. So it's so where he can grow is just honestly just size and strength. And so I don't know if he's going to get so bigger, but he's just another guy where you look at him and you go, I don't know, man, like, work on your shot strength, like work on your, do some forearm curls. It's one of those where, like, I think it's a similar conversation with Jagger Firkus last year, where it's just like, where does he improve? How can he better his game? It's like, I don't know, he's pretty damn efficient. He just has to get stronger. And so it's just, when you send him back, it's just it's a thing of like, continue to adapt, continue to try out different things offensively, maybe try out a different position here or there or whatever. But the reality is the better he's going to get is how he can just become a pro, a more mature, stronger player to be able to kind of navigate and fight and win little one-on-one battles when he needs to.
In a minute, I'm going to finish my conversation with Joel about Andrew Cristall. But first, I've got to tell you all about Built Bar. Now, because I'm in the States at the minute, I had to get some Built Bars in. It's hard for me to get them back home. But as soon as I got here, I picked up a box. I got lemon cheesecake and grasshopper cookie, and they are good as hell. And if you, like me, again, are a nightmare person that exists almost entirely on like iced coffee and breakfast sandwiches, then Built is for you. If you are a person that actually cares about what they eat, you go to the gym, you eat salads, like, Built Bar is for you as well. They are keto friendly, they are paleo friendly. They only have 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar, and they've got 17 grams of protein. And you don't even have to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Just head on in, go to the pharmacy section. At Walmart, you can pick up a 4-bar box. At Sam's Club, you can grab a 13-bar box. They've got flavors like cookies and cream, double chocolate, brownie batter, churro. Just head in, see what you can find, and you can thank me later. Yeah, for sure. Well, the Blue Jackets do have a second first-round pick in this draft. It's probably going to be around the 16 to 20 range, or it'll be the 18 to 22 range. I forgot. I don't know how math works. It's late here. I'm very tired.
Yeah.
But it's in that range of Andrew Cristall could end up as a Blue Jacket. I don't think it's super likely, but I think it could be a fun little pickup to add to the collection of prospects. And if people want to know more about Andrew Cristall, if people want to know more about Zach Benson, like we talked about last episode, where can they find you and your work?
So I go by Dad Hockey Joe on Twitter, and you can find me there. As I said, I always love to tell the story, but it's just like, oh, what about baseball or football? It's like, yeah, but Dad Hockey Joe. And so it's, I don't know, that's kind of how it came about. But you can find me that on Twitter. And then if you're looking for any sort of prospect analysis, you can find both my analysis at FC Hockey, which is where I do a lot of the draft eligible stuff. And then the majority of my work you can find at puckpreps.com. And so there are specific websites there as well. And so Puck Preps does everything from, they run everything by age groups, not by draft eligibility. So it's all, if you want to see the best 2007s across North America, we've got all our rankings there. We got a great team, and the site's growing pretty fast. So if you're into prospects, even younger than the NHL draft, you can kind of go see who's coming next year and the years after. But for this as well, and this year, you can find articles and write-ups and profiles on all of these guys. And so for Puck Preps as well, I'll be releasing my rankings, my personal rankings through there when we get closer to the draft.
Awesome. I will definitely be checking those out. Hopefully, so will my listeners will as well. Thank you for stopping by and talking about some WHL prospects. There's a bunch more WHL guys in the draft that I want to look at, so we will definitely see Joel here again, I'm sure.
It's a busy year.
Yes. And that's all I've got for you today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about whatever the heck that was that happened at the weekend against the Vegas Golden Knights. And we're going to do a mailbag as well. So if you have questions, then you can comment on this YouTube video. You can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. You can at me or DM me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can at or DM the podcast Twitter at LO_Bluejackets. And hopefully the next game, which I believe is Wednesday against Washington, or Tuesday against Washington, excuse me, is a little bit better than this weekend was, because it was rough out there, folks. So we're going to talk about that and more on tomorrow's episode of Locked on Blue Jackets. So until then, make sure you stay locked on.